For thousands of years, elders and knowledge keepers have used stories to educate future generations. Stories and words can help heal our hearts and make Mother Earth a better place for all people. This is Healing Hearts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Healing Hearts. I'm Tracy Koga. Well, we are on the eve of our country's biggest celebration, Canada Day. But this year, it is very different. So tonight, we're going to start the conversation and learn more how the Indigenous and newcomer communities celebrate their culture and the land that they live in. This is Healing Hearts. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for being on this very special show. We are on the eve of, like I said, our country's biggest celebration, and though, you know, it's fireworks and waving our flag, it seems far, far, far away from that. So tonight, you know, we really want to educate and learn more on how Indigenous and newcomer communities celebrate their culture and also the country that they live in. So I would like to welcome Ruben Garang from IPW, Immigration Partnership Winnipeg. I've got Abdul Berry from NEEDS, and definitely Abdul Berry, we want to know more about NEEDS because it is such an important organization. And thank you so much to Marianne Patrick High Eagle. Marianne, you have some amazing stories, I think, to share with us about culture and celebration and what it means to the Indigenous communities. So let's begin Healing Hearts. I want to, I guess, first start with Marianne. You're wearing orange, and all of our hearts are with your community. And it is heartbreaking. There's a loss for words of the things that have been happening. But maybe you can put a different perspective on it, Marianne, on how the healing process can start, the conversations can start, and we can begin to learn more.
Hi. First of all, thanks for having me on your show, Healing Hearts. And since the news broke of the 215 children found in unmarked graves, it has affected everyone in the Indigenous communities across Canada, USA, and other Indigenous peoples of the world. And not only that, it has also affected other nationalities. And there's some people that have reached out to me to express their first of all, their sympathies, their condolences, and they want to reach out. They want to reach out to the Indigenous community. Some have said, what can I do? And I've met all kinds of people with different nationalities and different expressions. But I think that the one that has touched me the most was a complete stranger at a gas station, an elderly white man was expressing some thoughts, and at first I did not understand what he was talking about, but he went on to talk about love. And at the end of the conversation we had, before he walked away, he said, I love you. And, you know, that really, really touched my heart, because with the work, with the horses that we do, that is what we promote. We promote love, peace, and harmony, along with awareness of different issues and sicknesses. So that's something that we live by and we promote is love, peace, and harmony. So when this broke out, we were all devastated. I was stunned. I was in shock. I didn't react for how many days. I could not believe. And it was not until more numbers came. And just a few days ago, I finally broke. And I didn't know why I was crying every time I'm alone. To drive down the road, tears streaming. And there are some things that you block out or don't think about. But it came back. And I thought of my mother who went to residential school. And I thought of all our other ancestors who have been taken. And my father was spared. And I've been telling his story. He was spared because when the police came and the Indian agents came, they just come to the house. They don't knock, they just walk in and take your children. And my grandmother, my father's mother, she stuffed him under her chair. She was wearing a big skirt, a big dress. She stuffed him under her chair and hid him. So he was hiding under the chair until they left. And so my father was spared from residential school. But my mother, she was taken. And we lived a life that there were no hugs, no I love yous, because they were punished for that. They could not speak to each other. They could not show affection. And they were punished severely. And I don't need to go into the abuse because we've all seen these stories by the survivors. All the abuse of every kind has been afflicted on them. And it left me wondering, how can these people who say they do the work of God, how can they be so evil? How can they kill people, little children, little babies? How can they rape them? I did not understand, and it just broke my heart. And tomorrow, July 1st, is July 1st. It is not Canada Day for us. It is not a day to celebrate. I have a non-native friend ask me to explain and did not want to be offending. He gave his perspective, but also wanted to hear my perspective of why people are not going to celebrate Canada Day. And we discussed it, and I explained to the best of my ability, but the bottom line, I said, okay, it's a very short story. It can be told in 2 sentences. Long ago, white man came to this land and decided he found land, and he went back and brought some more and took over the land and started killing off the original peoples of this land. And he says, I found this land. This land was not found. This land was already here. It had its original peoples living here already in their own lifestyle that was healthy. There was no diseases. And so I said that to him. And how would you feel if someone came into your house and took your children and said, you're an animal? You can't raise your children because you're an animal, and took your children away and shoot you if you tried to protest? How would you feel? So he understood, and I said, that is what Canada represents. That is what the government represents, because look all around. The government rules. The government says there's a line here, you can't cross it. There's a curb here. They built streets. They put curbs there. You put a one-way street there, one-way sign. You can't even go on that street the opposite way because the government said you can't go down the street. I could go on and on and on. The government rules everything, including all peoples. And we owned all of North America. And look where we are now. Where I live, there's like how many square miles we live on, and that's it. My original land that I came from, 4 square miles. What can you do on 4 square miles? Nothing. We were starved. Our people were starved, herded off in small sections of land, not allowed to go out to hunt, fish, trap, to survive. And I remember a day when I was very little. They're knocking on the door, and they were bringing in big white sacks. A big pile of white sacks were left in the house. Later on in life, I learned that those sacks were bags of flour. And if there's 6 of you in your family, you got 6 bags of flour, and you're expected to survive for 1 year. 1 bag of flour per person. That's what they did to our people. And flour can make you sick. They gave us flour, they gave us sugar, they gave us alcohol. All the things to make the people sick and die off. Every strategy is what they say, kill off the Indians. Every strategy. But, you know, our people are strong because we lived off the land, hunting, trapping, fishing, and trading with each other, from one community to another community, or from one nation of people to another nation. Trading went on to survive, and we are resilient through it all. There are some who survived to continue on our nations. And today, we're able to have our ceremony, which was banned. We weren't allowed to worship. We weren't allowed to pray. We weren't allowed to have ceremony. We were banned. And we were also not allowed to celebrate life. We were banned from dancing. that letter was circulating on Facebook, the original letter that went out to stop the Indians. They're enjoying themselves. They're living a little too much. Stop them. Take things away from them. You know, that's our livelihood. They took that away for a while, and we were able to get it back. We got our ceremonies back and our celebrations back, and we're still going strong.
No.
There's still some left, and that was how many years ago? We're still here, and we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep fighting for our survival. We're going to keep working on moving forward. And the biggest thing right now with this findings of the children, I said to my family, this is going to be here the rest of our lives, because we seek justice, and they're not going to want to allow us to have justice. They're not going to admit to their evil ways. They're not going to admit that they were trying to wipe out nations. And so it's going to be an ongoing, I hate to say fight, but you know, we have to keep standing up for ourselves.
Mhm.
Because I want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to be strong, be part of a strong nation that's going to stand up for their rights and protect their nation. And the important thing is that we need to educate. We need to educate the non-Indigenous and share our stories. And I'm really glad that for social media, because can you imagine if there was no social media? Can you imagine is this story gonna hit the newspapers? Yeah, it'll probably hit the front page once, and you'll never hear it again. But through social media, it gives us all a voice. It gives us all a chance to tell our stories. And I encourage everyone to keep telling your stories, keep telling your stories,
No.
and keep educating people, all non-Indigenous people, and all the immigrants who come here. You know, I encourage them to seek that education, seek that knowledge of the Indigenous peoples of this land. Find out about them, learn about them, and respect them, respect their ways, because we respect yours. We respect everyone's ways, and everyone need to respect each other's ways.
No.
And
Thank
we
you.
can all get along.
Yes. Oh, Marianne, thank you. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough. No, I was a little teary-eyed, but you've told your story, and we'll come back to you being a fancy dress dancer and the horses too as well, and the importance of that, and Unity Ride. But I want to now go to, I think, Ruben, because this is a great segue. Marianne just finished off saying we need to educate, and especially the immigrants and the newcomers that come to our country. And I think you're the perfect person to talk about this too as well. Your thoughts, Ruben?
Thank you so much for having me here and the invitations. I want to say also thank you to Mariana for Marianne for the sharing, for the history. Um, it touches our heart, but also, we feel you in the situations. All of us here in Canada, are hit so hard when we heard of the news, and the news are keep coming. So it's emotionally challenging to the indigenous peoples. We feel you, and we will stand with you to support you.
Thank you.
Before I talked about uh, the need for the education, maybe I'll start by telling my own personal story.
Yes.
And as you can see at my background, I came from Bersabana area. The river at the back in my picture is the River Nile, one of the longest river in the world. And my village happened to be situated in the valley closer to the river, kind of a swampy area. And so I always put that kind of a picture behind me to remind myself about home. But this is a story that I want to share with you. And I always relate with people, the indigenous peoples here, when they share their own stories, because I don't have this similar journey, but I also went through, uh, you know, some experience. When I was a young, a war broke out in my own country, and and at, as a teen, a situation happened that I get disconnected from my own parent, my siblings, the village that I grew up in, and I ended up in another country as a child soldier, from the being a teen, being taken away from everything that everything that you identify with, everything that you understand, and be taken somewhere far away from home, where you don't know where you are going, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. I could imagine people that have been taken away by force and placed in residential schools and not allowed to come back home. I could relate. Since that time I left, like 30 something years ago, I never had a chance to, went back and see my parents until they died. You know, I never went back and meet my own sibling in a village that I grew up in. Uh, I, I, I happened. I think I was on the news a couple of years ago when when I was done with my school. I decided to go back home, and my hope was that I'm gonna go home, try to trace where my parents were buried, and then see whether I could rebury them, so that I could have that closure with them. Because when I left them alive. They were, there active, but thing changes. And in my mind, when I left as a child, I still think everything is still the same. The village is still the same. Even though I know as I'm a grown-up man now, I still think that, because my life was distracted as a child, I still think as if my parents are still there. I still see where I left them. I still see what they used to do. So I can relate when it comes to, you know, um, being taken away from your own parent and taken somewhere you don't know, you don't have control over your life. You are instructed to do things by others, and not allowed to do things that you like to do, not given the opportunity that you need to do, or not growing up. Human being it's made up of a culture. We're all part of the culture. So if you are taken away from your own culture, then you become something else. You're no longer the person who you are. So I could feel the story, and I could, anytime when there's anything that like that on the news, I could relate. I when I was doing my second degree here in University of Winnipeg, had a privilege of being taught by Peter Canoe, the father of WAP. He was my teacher for 2 years. and he walked us through the belief of the Anishinaabe people. We had the opportunity to go to, I had the opportunity to go to northern Manitoba here, which look completely different than where we are in terms of the forest, the tree, the land, the lake, so beautiful. And I met with the First Nation people, the Cree people there in different communities. And, I was welcomed. They did not look, I'm very sure some of them saw the Black person in the first time, but I still received welcome. And I could see that in their face, even though, you know, um, I did not stay long there. I felt home when I was there. So, and the education that I got from Peter always remind me about the struggles and the challenges that the indigenous people went through. So that I want to share that from my own personal account. I know that when we talk about immigrant and refugees, there's so many of us, and we all come with different experience, different cultures, and we are glad that we are accepted here. And this is the hospitality of the indigenous people that allowed us to be here today. So anything that we could do to be part of the healing process, the reconciliations, is what we wanted to do as the newcomer community. What can we do to support the indigenous people to go through the healing process? We cannot change the past, but I think there's a lot to be learned from. There's a lot to correct ourselves from. There's a lot to remind ourselves from. But there's a lot to honor and acknowledge so that the people that went through suffering and continue to suffer today need to be acknowledged.
Oh, so important. Um, we'll get back to you, Ruben, on more on the Ethnocultural Council and the whole kind of bringing different communities together, because I think that is so important too as well. Abdul Bari represents NEEDS, and NEEDS stands for
So thank you so much for having me here. My name is Abdul. Yes, NEED stands for Newcomers Employment and Education Development Services. And before I go to whatever thing that we do, I would like to acknowledge that we do also sympathize with what is happening, just like Ruben said. I mean, anytime July 1st comes, these are some of the questions that we ask ourselves. Like he said as well, I'm also an immigrant, and thanks so much for bringing a lot of context. So I wouldn't speak much as far as our clients are concerned, because Ruben has, brought us some kind of perspective or a story, personal story that's related to, if not most of our clients that we serve. So Marian, thanks for the story. And this is the kind of avenue that we provide to our clients when they come to NEED Center to share their stories, to help improve the system. So as I said earlier on, NEED Center represents Newcomers Employment and Education Development Services. It was established in 1999 as a non-profit charitable organization to provide support and service to newcomer children and youth with the aim of successful integration and enhancement into the Canadian society. So we do provide educational, employment, and social recreational activities to support their integration into the country, or to Manitoba in particular. We are very aware that cultural continuity is very powerful because culture represents every person. And we do also acknowledge the fact that our clients are from different cultural background and orientation. So one of our values, or some of our values, are diversity, inclusion, equity, and equality. So we value these things, and we do always communicate this to our clients to acknowledge, recognize, and respect different cultural orientation. Because in Canada, we do have different culture that needs to be respected. And just as you want your culture or your identity to be respected, we always educate our clients to respect diverse cultural orientation and background. So just as Marianne and Ruben said, we at Need Center, we do provide safe space for clients to share their stories, one of which Ruben has actually given a very clear background for us to hear. Our clients are also from very unfortunate backgrounds. So we do acknowledge the challenges or difficulties that Indigenous people have gone through in the past. And as maybe Ruben will talk later, because I have been meeting with Ruben for a couple of times in different capacities. At Need Center, we do partner with organizations that are committed to Indigenous reconciliation or healing process, where, for example, we have Indigenous Orientation Toolkit that we are partners, and our main aim of joining this kind of partnership or being part of this is to help train our diverse staff who are from different countries with different cultural background to be able to educate our clients who are also from different cultural background. So culture, celebrating culture is very important because it helps unite us and also help to educate us. So I will see this cultural celebration, for instance, I do also know some information about Indigenous. I learned it here on my own, not in educational curriculum, because I also did my second degree at the University of Manitoba. I studied sociology, master's in sociology, and I did immigration. Nowhere did I come across a course on Indigenous studies. I was disturbed because definitely it was as if the history of Canada is not tied to Indigenous people. So I, on myself, tried to read something about residential school and about some of the neglected aspects of Canada. And I thank you so much, Marianne, to giving me a lot of context. I was very moody and very emotional with the story that you shared. Very, very emotional. Anytime I listen to stories of Indigenous background and history, I can relate a lot because, as Ruben said, immigrants also have their own stories. But if you are able to resonate with what you have, I came as an international student, but in Ghana, originally where I'm originally from, we were colonized by the British. But we were able to fight for independence and we were able to get our land back. So someone like me imagining if this wasn't possible, then possibly I would have been the same person saying the story that Marianne said. So we sympathize with you, and we are ready to work with you throughout this healing process. And as Ruben said, the past has gone. We are actually very committed in working to reconcile and to have a better Canada. Thank you so much once again for the story.
No, thank you, Abdul. Amazing. And your work is only just beginning now, right? It is so important to educate. And, this is why we started this show, just to have that safe place to share your lived experience, to share your stories, and hopefully others can hear it and maybe come forward. So let's talk about then celebrations, not maybe about Canada Day, obviously, but Marianne, let's go back to you now. Fancy dress champion, and the horses. Tell us more about the horses.
Okay, so maybe I'll start with the horses first. Mm-hmm. And as you know, the horses are beautiful. And in any culture, any nationality, horses are healing to people. There's a lot of therapy programs that use horses to heal people. And I've done several shows before, like this casual setting and storytelling. I was invited to the very first one because I was overheard talking about horses and horse racing. And I had talked about my horse winning a race, and I guess my expression of my feelings had touched the host, so she invited me over. So we talked about horses, but basically, in our culture, the horse is a sacred animal, and long ago it was used. It was a working horse, and it was used for all kinds of purposes, to move camp, um, go hunting, transportation. You know, it was a very useful animal. And time went on. Um, Now we went through these eras of our people losing everything, and we even lost that, the horsemanship.
Mhm.
We lost horsemanship. Like here in Rosa River, um, long ago there was horses here, and they were used for working, hauling wood, or whatever needed to be done, transportation. The horse was used, but through that era of residential school, um, kids were gone for so long, and it just evolved into, like, our people were oppressed, and so alcohol comes into play, and the 60s scoop came into play. It was always still taking the children away, because the parents were not deemed um, to be healthy or well enough to raise families. So again, they were still taking children away while parents were suffering from the effects of the residential school and having to be taken away, sent to adoption. Um, just it just a no end to the cycle. And through it all, there's the resilient ones who still kept horsemanship going. And in my family, um, my older brothers, they were part of a group, and it was a fairly large group, and that group originated um, from South Dakota, and they rode from South Dakota to Sioux Valley, Manitoba, which is just west of Brandon, Manitoba. And the family from South Dakota were doing these healing rides, and they went under the name of Unity Riders. So when they rode over here into Canada, um, our families that were involved continued that work because they found it to be so healing, and continued that work. And they were called the Unity Riders. That's why nowadays, um, you see a group of riders, right away they're called Unity Riders, because that name was here for 27 years. And a lot of the original riders have, what we say, moved on to the next camp, meaning that they've passed on, and they went on to the happy hunting grounds. And some also say the Star Nation when they pass on. So anyway, my two brothers that were heavily involved, they passed away also in 2014 and 15. And rides basically stopped. And so there was a time where we were trying to revive these rides again, and there were things going on that needed to be addressed. So the families of these original riders, we gathered and decided to return this name back to South Dakota, along with gifts for as offering, as a thank you for using their name for 27 years. So that was done ceremoniously here and in South Dakota. So the era of the Unity Riders is done. So now we no longer use the name Unity Riders because it's not ours. It belongs to a family in South Dakota. So now when we refer to these rides, we can call them spirit horse rides. And that is because the work that is being done is to bring healing, just like the way the Unity Riders did. But this is a new era. And so this is the work that they do. And they bring awareness of different issues, sicknesses, and for healing, basically. And when these rides come, the people who are standing there to watch these horses come in, they take so much pride that it brings tears to their eyes, because this is a show of how resilient our Indigenous people are, because sometimes some of them would wear their regalia, you know, they dress in the era, and it brings pride, like lots of pride, to our Indigenous people's hearts, and they cry. And it makes them feel better. It uplifts their spirits. And these horses, they know when they're on a ride, because we start off with a ride in a ceremonious way. For the group that I'm working with is the next generation. They're the grandchildren, along with many people who have stepped up to support and be part of and take pride, to show that we are Indigenous, we are strong, we are resilient. So this group is growing, and when there's a call for a horse spirit ride, they offer tobacco. Tobacco is very important in our culture. You know, long ago, the tobacco was all natural, and nowadays the only tobacco we have is, you know, the store bought. So some that do not have access or do not learn their ways to make the natural tobacco, they'll use the commercial tobacco. So we take that tobacco and we take it into ceremony, and then when it's time to do the ride, that tobacco goes into bundles. We put it into, we call them tobacco ties. So these tobacco ties are made, and prayer is said when they're made, so that these tobacco ties go on the horse. So when that horse is going on that ride, they carry the prayers of the people that are requesting the ride, and also from the ceremony. It all goes into that bundle, and the horses carry it. And the belief is that the horse's spirit carries the prayers of the the sponsors, the ones that are requesting for a horse ride, and that's what we do. We do everything ceremoniously. We will not start a ride without ceremony
Mary,
because this is our life.
Marianne,
Yes,
yeah, I was wondering, so is there going to be a ride tomorrow? Are you organizing something?
yes, we have been requested to bring in horses tomorrow in Winnipeg, and there's a press conference by the chiefs of Manitoba at the Human Rights Museum
At
at 12 noon.
12 noon.
So that press conference will happen, and when it's over, the ride of horses will begin down from the museum to Portage Avenue. We'll cross Portage and Main, and we will be traveling down Portage Avenue west to 1075 Portage Avenue, where the Peguis building is, the Peguis First Nation building. That's where the ride will end. And there will be a ceremony going on there and ending off with a feast.
Oh,
So,
wonderful. And open to the public?
as far as I know, it is. And we encourage people to, come out, stand on the sides of Portage Avenue and watch the horses to come. And the event will be escorted by police, and there's also security to assist. Just because it's a horse event, there's going to be a
Yes.
lot of traffic. We need to keep everyone safe. Safety
yes.
is always number one. So
Oh, thank you. That's
there
amazing.
is an escort.
Oh, that's perfect, and you will be part of it. So everyone, yes, this ride, this special event is going to be definitely something very, very important. I'm going to go now to Ruben and to Abdul, because we're talking about multicultural celebration. Ruben,
Yes.
you just had multiculturalism day. Maybe reflect on that and what are some of the outcomes from that day?
Thank you again. We had the Multiculturalism Day celebrations last Sunday. And it was organized by the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba. I did not introduce the organization before. So Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba is hosted by the Immigration Partnership Winnipeg. And Immigration Partnership Winnipeg is hosted by Social Planning Council of Winnipeg. So 3 organizations that operate side by side. And the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba is an umbrella organization for more than 20 different ethnic groups. It was formed in 2018. It has associations of people that come from different parts of the world, Japanese, Somalis, people from Sri Lanka, Colombia, Nigeria, Sudan, Syria, Iraq, people from different parts of the world forming the association. It is a unique organization in a way that most of us do come here. We form association for our own cultures. Now, this is an umbrella organization for many cultures. And so people are learning from one another and celebrating the beauty of all the cultures. So a year ago, we celebrated Canadian Multiculturalism Day celebrations. The Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba organized it. This year, we organized another one last Sunday. It was beautiful. It's always amazing to be in the middle of people from different cultures. You always be learning. enjoying the rhyme of their musics and food. Well, one of our speakers in the last event was Michael Champel, and he talked mostly about what he brought as part of his culture, that important of 4 F's, like the food, the family, and I'm trying to remember the other four, the other, the other two, like important of food, the important of a family, that all of us value. And so we had a very beautiful celebration with all the people from different cultures, with the politician from Manitoba, which is always open to Manitoban in general. So people from different communities were there in the celebration. So it was a very successful event. And the ECCM, the Ethnocultural Council, also every year organize what they call the Stronger Together dinner, another celebration which bring people from different way of lives, usually 400 to 500. It was 100 last year, done virtually, but before the COVID era, they used to bring 400 to 500 people together to celebrate cultures, and you see people dancing, sharing food, learning from one another, including the indigenous peoples participated in those kind of celebrations. The roles that we are playing at the Ethnocultural Council is to make sure that we learn from one another, to build relationships, to support each other, to understand each other better, and to share food, because in our cultures, you sit down and eat with somebody, it's always difficult to think bad about that person, because there's somebody that you have sat down and shared food with. That's why in many of our celebration, we make sure that there's something to share, there's food to share, because that's very important.
No.
And so that's the event that we did last weekend, and it was very successful.
Oh, a quick question, Ruben. Do you think maybe going forward, this could be a celebration, on July 1st, regardless? And really, it's not just one day, everybody, right? We all have to love each other every single day. But to bridge these gaps and to learn, we need to have these gatherings so we can all come together. Abdul, now let's talk about the Newcomer Youth. So these are very, very important people, right? Because they're going to take over. They're going to lay the next foundation of hopefully bringing everyone together. And I think they're smart. Am I not wrong? Because you work with someone.
Yes, you're not wrong. They are very smart. They are very smart. As we've all shared, culture actually is the way of life of people, and it's almost everything: food, language, tradition, religion, everything. So Need Center, as their first contact, we do let them know that cultural diversity is very important. Mm-hmm. So we always educate them on that, and we always have some celebration days where we encourage diverse cultural activities. We normally also even invite indigenous people to come and tell other stories just shared by Marianne about residential schools. The blanket exercise, we've had our youth witness that, and some week, even staff, we also have some conferences where staff also participate in these activities, like I said, and for them to feel that kind of story, that kind of experience, because we do have safe space for them to share this experience, their respective experience, and acknowledge the fact that with unity, they'll be able to fight the common enemy. So our youth, like you said, very, 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 intelligent. They do have a lot of strengths. They are multiculturalism, or like multilingualism, let me put that way, because as Ruben said, most of our youth are from their families. They moved from one country to another country because of the circumstance that made them to leave. So it could be a natural disaster, it could be war, it could be conflict, ethnic conflict, and any other occurrences. and they sometimes move from one country, their home country, to a refugee camp in a different country, and move from that place to, so their final destination could be here in Canada. So they've learned a lot. They've had a lot of experience. They've lost a lot of family members. They've gone through like witnessing and violence and participating in violence forcefully. And some of them, go through relocation, and they have their education interrupted. So we do have some refugees who are not able to fit very well in the educational systems because of their continuous relocation, and this really affects their integration. That's why Lead Center is actually support them in all aspects of their life. So in doing so, we let them also know and acknowledge that they are coming from different countries, so as other people. So we help them to, to be very aware and respect their own culture whilst coming into Canada to be able to integrate successfully. So we do have a lot of projects. We do have some cultural events, just as the multiculturalism, where you also participate. We normally send them to cultural activities such as Fokorama, different Fokorama events. We take our youth there to witness and respect different cultural stuff. We also go to Indigenous People's Day at the Fox and other places, just for them to feel that Canada is a multicultural country, and we need to recognize, acknowledge, and respect these cultural differences. And that's how we are able to stay connected. So we normally have projects with them, and in order to help with the cooperation and coordination, just like Ruben said, we sometimes encourage them to work between and among different ethnic groups, so that they'll be able to have and learn from each other to build themselves and the society that they live in. So yes, definitely, it's something that we do educate them, and we do also let other stakeholders, because we work with schools, school divisions in Manitoba, and we also work with universities and colleges. So since we represent newcomers, we also have some orientation sessions where we educate school staff as well as students who are Canadians, students from all backgrounds, about newcomer culture as well as Indigenous culture, so that they'll be able to know how to work together as one people and work towards a common goal of unity and peace in the community.
Well, if anybody is watching, we have such incredible organizations here in our city that, my goodness, let's start this wave and start the healing. It's incredible, the work. Thank you, Ruben and Abdul. Amazing work. I'm just going to go one last question to everyone. Marianne,
Yes.
what would be the one message that you would like to send to everyone tonight on the eve of July 1st?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, if everyone took even 5 minutes of their time to, first of all, think of all the babies that didn't come home, and educate themselves. Educate themselves on the issue. I think once they educate themselves, they will have a better understanding, first of all, of our people, the original peoples of this land, and how they are portrayed is unfair. They are portrayed unfairly. After all they've been through, how are they expected to be like? This is so there's so many emotions that it's hard to explain because there's just too much. And we just want our stories to be heard. And we just want people to understand that stereotyping of Indigenous people is unfair. And to understand that and show empathy and respect.
Mhm.
Respect our people. Respect our women. Because that's the other issue. So many women going missing. You know, respect them. Respect the women.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you. Ruben.
The last thing that I will share is that I want to say to the indigenous peoples that we stand with you. We will not, you know, say that we have the similar experience with what you went through. We can relate, but our experiences are different. So we understand the situations. I would also like to say to all of us as Canadians that it is not enough to acknowledge what happened in the past by an apology. We also need to have aggressive policies to reform or end what we are now seeing in the childcare system, to reform the justice system, to make sure that there are houses. The housing situation in the northern part of our province need to change. The people that live in the reserves deserve to live in houses that are enough for them, that are healthy. They also need to have clean water. We all have the privileges of drinking clean water here in the city of Winnipeg. That's not the case in the northern communities. And if we say that we understand the mistake of the past, we also need to work hard to make sure that that what happened does not repeat itself in any forms. And so aggressive policies would be better than an apology. It's not bad to have an apology, but we also need to end what we are seeing today. For people that are new to the country, the newcomers, I know it's always a struggle. For the agencies that work with the newcomers, it's always a struggle. When people come and pick stereotypes on the streets, we need to work hard. I know we are working to make sure that people have the right education, but we need to work hard to educate people about what happened in the past. We don't need to do it. We have to facilitate. We just have to turn to our indigenous elders, our indigenous community members to do the educations. It's not our role as newcomers to do it. We have to facilitate that. We have to provide a space for that education to happen, and in a genuine way. In a genuine way. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ruben. And Abdul.
Yeah, thanks so much. Robin, you've said a lot, and thanks, Marianne, and for the last words. So what I would say, just like Robin said, I want to say it from the micro perspective. It's very important to acknowledge that and building a community or a country is not on only one person's shoulder. And we are talking about policy change, and we also need to have listening ears and show empathy towards Indigenous people. Because as we've been talking about today, we need to educate ourselves, and we need to do that by giving listening ears. We have to be active or good listeners and listening to the stories and empathize and sympathize with Indigenous people. By doing so, we'll be able to understand why we need to work together throughout the healing process. Ruben has said a lot about that, that we do acknowledge the past, but we need to do more about the future in terms of reconciliation. And we can do so by respecting cultural differences, respecting Indigenous people history, respecting the past, although it has gone, but if we don't work towards that, that means that we are not showing respect to that. And by working towards that is when we acknowledge and have listening ears for them, talk with them to see how we can move their country forward, and without necessarily making them feel they are neglected one way or the other. So I think whilst we are speaking from the policy level, we also need to consider our stereotypical attitude towards Indigenous people by educating ourselves, because we are our own agents of development, and we can do so by changing our attitudes towards Indigenous people and towards the past. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abdul. Such an amazing night. And hopefully our viewers there can reflect and think about everything that was said here tonight. I have 3 words: truth, love, and respect. May we all reflect on those 3 words tomorrow. And don't forget, at noon at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, it's the Spirit Horse Ride. And you'll see this beautiful woman here, Marianne, hopefully leading the ride. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
So
and we'll see you next time on Healing Hearts.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne, for the good job that you do.
Thank you.